Good day, traders. This is Richard. Okay, it's almost 7 a.m. Friday, February the 12th, and we've been working for 2 weeks now. And we've covered some very important basics, intense basics, and overview basics. And we're going to continue that for another at least the rest of February. We're going to be looking at basics. And the basics consist of studying the environment. In other words, let's take it to where you're building a website and you got a new client and the client needs a website. And maybe they've had a website before, maybe they never have. In your particular case, you've never traded before, so let's look at it like it's the first time that you've ever needed a website. And the first thing you do is listen to the prospective client and what he needs or what she needs in the website. What does she do? How does she do it? And what does she want? All right, so let's step back now and pretend we haven't had 2 weeks together already and look at the perspective of where you're at in your life and Russell, where he's at in his life. And let's talk about what you want in your life to change, to improve in the vein of new ideas. And this trading commodity futures is a new idea for you. And now you've gotten a little bit of information, some of it very technical. Everything that my colleague said is very technical. And the reason I let him say it to you instead of me is that particular video. And I told you I have over 100 videos from him. Some of them are 4 hours long. And not all of the videos are worth your time. And I believe, honestly, and it's not a criticism, but it's the truth, that he provided his students too much information. So we had too many things to learn before we knew any of them well enough to go forward with those. And I get the impression that as he was teaching, he was learning. And he would learn something new and he would share it with us. And some of it was good,
Divergence,
but some of it was distracting. And I want to try to avoid that with you and Russell, myself. So I give you only what you need, and I give it to you straight and clear and complete so you can work with it and move forward and make money with it when you're ready. That's my goal. Now, I want to turn the mic over to you for 5 minutes and then to Russell for 5 minutes, or for whichever one of you wants to go first. But I want to hear from you what you want over the next year, because it's going to take a year to get to the point where you are ready to trade as a master. It'll take a year. It's a year-long journey. And at an hour a day and 2 hours a day study, private time, you're going to get there. And that's all I have to say. I'd like to hear from you now.
Russell, you want to go first?
Sure. As in, like, what's my motivation or why I'm like learning about future trading? Is what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. It's kind of like just to have a bigger skill set, I guess. I know that my dad wants me to be more well-rounded, and I feel like learning something like this just improves to my skill set, I guess. I don't have a real reason why I want to learn this. Like, it's good to have money, but I'm sure there, if I really wanted money as a high schooler, or like, enough for someone my age, I could have just like with what is it, like a minimum wage job, like at some place like In and Out or like Target or something like that. But you know, I feel like, yeah, this is just to widen my skill set and make some cash or money.
Okay. Now,
Coach.
do you have, um, so if you were In and Out Burger, like my granddaughter, she's now 29 or 30, I can't remember. And I remember when she went to work at In-N-Out Burger in San Bernardino, California, and she was making more money than anybody at McDonald's or anybody else. I think it's a really good place to work, and it's famous in places here in California, but you can't find one in Portland, Oregon. You mentioned it; it just struck a chord. But you're right. You need to generate some money, and you want to have you want to broaden your life. And In-N-Out Burger is going to teach you about the retail business world. It's going to teach you how to work with other people, and it's going to teach you, and it's going to pay you some money. They train their people extremely well. However, it is limited to X number of hours. And now my grandson does it, and he's 20, and he learned a trade back when he was 15, 16, and 17, or 14, 15, and 16, I forget which. And then he stepped back from it because he he uh, he had influences outside of he just quit. I'm disappointed that he quit. Why am I telling you this? Simply because I have some familiarity with young people, and they want money. You want money. I remember when I was a boy, 12, I got a paper route, and then I worked in a supermarket, and then I joined the Air Force. I wanted to be free, and I wanted to flap my wings. But education needs to come before that exercise, that flapping the wings. Every young person wants to fly like a hummingbird at first. And a hummingbird goes from one flower to a bush to another flower. You look or watch them in the backyard, and you'll see them land on different plants 17 times a minute. And when they move from one plant to the other plant, it happens in a microsecond because they're so fast. So focus is absolutely essential. And as a youth, you have plenty of energy. You just need to channel it to maintain that focus. And you have drive. You want to succeed. And so your drive and your deliberation and your determination is there. You need to feed it. And you need to have the strength and stamina to maintain your focus on the details and the ends in the end game. The end game is making money regular, taking $500 a day from the market. Now, people wonder, how much money do I have to put in this to get that $500? And believe it or not, if you're careful with your stops, $5,000 is about it. That's what you need. If each of you set up a $5,000 account over the next 90 to 180 days and judiciously traded it once or twice a day based on really good setups that I'll show you, I'll be right there with you. You can make that $500 a day. You have you been there when I did it? No, you haven't gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning yet. I'm going to work at persuading you to maybe once a week just get up at 4:45 and sit down in front of your computer at 5 and watch us work. You don't have to do it every day, but maybe plan it sometime out in the future. And go to bed a little bit earlier, because that's when the meat is right. That's when everything is ripe. 5 o'clock in the morning. Actually, from 5 to 5:15, so you watch the market, and between 5:15 and 5:30, you go into trades and take the trades between 5:15 and 6 o'clock. 45 minutes there, and then you might take some more trades between 6 and 7, but maybe not, because if you've already made some money, the last thing you want to do is lose some money on lesser trades. So if you look at these 6 or 7 instruments that we watch, and we watch crude oil. That's my favorite. We also watch the euro currency in futures, and then we watch gold, and we watch natural gas, gasoline, and silver. And we also watch a few index futures, but we don't trade those until 6 o'clock, 6:30 or 7 o'clock, because they are related to the stock market, and the stock market doesn't open until that time. And sometimes to trade them well, you have to wait for that morning rush to be over, and then you can trade them. And that's later in the day when you're probably involved in school. So now I've talked, and I was listening to you talk, but I heard you. You want to do the right thing at your age so that you can build a lifestyle that will generate a little bit of income, and then maybe someday a lot of income every day, so that you can have a car and pay for your college education and grow into a business that you work on Wall Street someday. It's really a closed system on Wall Street. Don't expect to work on Wall Street. Getting a job at Goldman Sachs or getting a job at Morgan Stanley to trade other people's money is a lucrative thing. You have to be really, 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 really good, and you have to know some people to do it. But in this day and age, you don't need it. All you need to do is all you have to know is how to do it, and then do it well without risking more than you gain. So everything from this moment forward, I want you to think about how to conserve money and how to minimize risk rather than making money. And then, because making money will just happen because you follow these basic principles of managing risk. And when I say managing risk, in other words, if you get in a trade, don't let it go against you too much. Don't let it take more than it should if you're wrong. Like right now, I'm ready to sell this crude oil right here. You see that top and tail there in the 15-minute chart on the left? You see it's made a topping tail there, right here. That topping tail is a signal to buy. So I'm going to sell. I have a tendency to say the opposite of what I mean, and it's because I have a disease called dyslexia. It's a problem I've had since I was about your age. Didn't even know it until I was about 60. But anyway, I want to sell this, and I'm going to do it right now.
Order filled.
And my stop is going to be up here, one tick above this. And when this is red over here, when this is red, it means you're short. When this box is red, it means you're short. And when this number over here, this dollar, when it's red, it means you're underwater. You're losing money instead of making money because it's going up above the line. It's going back up against my trade. So my stop is up here, and at 63, and I got in at 52. That's $120 stop. Now, maybe I don't want to let it go that far. Maybe I just want to let it go this far against me, and if I'm right later, I'll get back in. Maybe I only want to lose $50, $60 instead of putting it up there. That's the proper place for it. But I don't like to lose $110, $120. I'd rather be wrong and know it now and take my lumps than to lose double that. So this is called managing risk. I could put it up there where it's supposed to go, and you're supposed to wait, but I don't want to risk that much money. I'm managing my risk. And now it's coming down. It's got down below, and I got a green thing. Now I'm green on the machine. Not yet. It's not good enough to be really green on the machine. Now, while we're watching this work, I'd like to hear from your dad. And then after he talks, I'd like to, you're going to hear some things your dad says. And then maybe you have something to add later. I don't want too much. I don't want you to say everything today, but I want you to think about it every day. What do you want? What do you want for you? And now, Ryan, tell me what you want for you.
So for me, even before we met as you as my client, I think it's
Filled.
almost been a year now. I've always been curious, like, what all this day trading is and stock market. And in college I studied environmental science, so I was always a scientist in mindset. And back in 2000, I started getting into entrepreneurship by selling stuff online. And what I did different was I started to build my website back in 2001, and I got success from there. Selling these any items really. I would go to downtown LA, take a picture, put it on eBay, sold on eBay, and yeah, that was before I got married. And our whole garage was like a little online store. While I was working at USC, I was an environmental safety specialist, so I was doing inspections of the laboratories, food facility, doing safety checks, fire safety, food safety. So, but at that time, I was there for 12 years. But on that, I guess for the 9 years that I was there, I was doing a side job, while working. To the point in 2012 where I left USC and I started doing websites full time. So I was able to reach my goal as an entrepreneur, that I can sustain myself with working on my own, working with clients such as you, Richard, and Jacob. And that was a checklist. I was able to pick up the kids to school, take them to school, do extracurricular activities anytime I want to. The freedom. While, of course, my wife was working as well, which helped, health insurance wise, she's a nurse. But always been curious about, like, and I know another person, Russell knows this, Coach Ramil, this is what he does on the side. And I think at this point too, he's very successful at it. But I see him traveling everywhere. He's always traveling and doing things I want.
Pending.
Going to Vegas. I was like, why is this guy? They can afford, like, every single time they're like in a hotel somewhere. Oh, I know why. His wife is also a corporate person at Honda. I don't know, Toyota.
Filled.
So I know he told me about this a long time ago. So I have another good friend, Coach Max. Russell knows him. He's a coach. He does a lot of stock market too, invests on it. And so I know it's an area that I'm very curious, because it's one, I don't have to, it's all online, right? You can make money online with this technology, now that we have the internet. And so from the past year that I've been with you, I've been looking at your data, but not really thinking about, hey, I don't need to learn this too. This is a guy that's expert. And so to the point where, wait a second, I know this guy, Richard, who's my client, that has so much knowledge, right, at your age, and willing to, teaching a class, because that's what your website is for. It's like, why don't I take it myself to understand? And at the same time, I think I'll be better as your web designer, because I'm taking a class myself and seeing the feedback. And I do have some feedback later on. And so I know my son, he's always been interested also in the stock market, but of course I would never be able to teach him that, because I don't know. And he can take a class later in college or something, finance or something. But my thinking is, if you want to learn something, everything is in your fingertips in your computer, even in YouTube or beyond. Richard, I mean, he can learn on his own too with all the other resources. And who better else to learn from someone that is practicing on a daily basis? Because for me as an entrepreneur, college is important. but you learn from the streets too. I never learned web design. I never took I don't even like coding, or I never took graphic design classes. I just learned it and practice it. And when I do websites after 12 years, or actually almost 19 years of doing it, or 20 years of doing it, it's just like breathing, it's easy. So I want to, although I'm 49, I think as we do this, you said like for a year, I know if, like you said, Richard, you keep your focus, and what Russell said too, to have a skill set with something like this, it's going to generate, aside from knowledge, it's going to generate income. And I invited Russell because I want him to start thinking about his future, aside from going to college, waiting for the professor to teach him. You don't need to wait, because everything is now, at 15, 16, he's already 16 years old. One of my goals is for him to learn this, because I know if he does, it's going to be a source of income for him if he likes it and if he's focused. So that's my spiel there, Richard.
Okay.
And I appreciate you too, because you're giving a lot of your time, and I know you're very passionate at it, and I really appreciate that. And I hope Russell appreciates that, because there's sometimes you come across people, and I think I'm very lucky to come across you guys.
Thank you. Okay, now notice, let's go back to trading for a minute, because I like to sometimes do a little bit of multi-processing. And I took another trade here because I saw that this candle here, let me get this thing over here out of the way so that you see we did not make a new high. We got stopped out because I tightened the stop more than I told you I should have. It should have been right up here, and if I had it up here, it'd been okay, but I didn't want to risk that 100. That's what I call risk management. So managing risk is the key ingredient to success in this world. Now you see how this candle has got red, got all the way down there. Now it's coming back against us. Do we want to lose what we've gained here? We could. It could take it away by going back up there against us. But see, we got back in because we opened this candle, and I noticed it didn't want to make a new high. And when I noticed that, I said, this is still a good short. I'm getting back in. That's why I got back in. And then while you were speaking, I went ahead and added the markers to show where we entered. The first time we entered here and exited there. The second time we entered here, and we haven't exited yet. And here we are down here with over $100. And I'm going to tighten my stop to where I don't lose on this trade. Now I cannot lose on this trade. It's gotten to a point where I can't lose. I might not make as much money as I'd like, but I can't lose. And so I'm going to tighten the stop a little bit more, because I want to talk about trading some more. I could stay with this for 2 or 3 hours, but I'm an impatient man, and that's not good. I don't want you to follow in that step. I want you to be patient, because this could really work. And the reason it could work is because of something I said during the last hour. I made a couple of videos that I'd like to share with you that you could watch this weekend that I made this morning between 5 and 7. There's 3
Stop filled.
and I got stopped out, and I'm gonna exit this software for a minute, and then I'll get back into it in a minute. So remind me to send you the 3 videos I made today. A couple of them are 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and maybe one of them is 40 minutes. I forget exactly, but there's about 3. And they're all about the things that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of months. So my job now is to guide you to think about the right stuff. And the term "the right stuff" became popularized as a result of the space mission back in the 1960s. And they made a movie called The Right Stuff about the best guys that they selected to be astronauts. And that was a big deal. It was the panacea of desire for young people to embrace the space mission. President Kennedy was such a great inspiration to millions of people worldwide. He was loved by the entire world. And he was a great man from 7 different ways from Sunday. And he made the space mission personal to you and me. And as a result, we told our kids about it. And now we have embraced it. And there's some things that go on in our world that are kept secret from us, that we have no idea what's going on. And one of those secrets was the stock market. They kept it a secret from the people for 200 years. That's a little bit too much. Long ago, about 150 years. The stock market was born in 1880, and the futures market was born in 1850. The futures market was born because there was so much feast or famine in the agricultural business. Farmers would grow a crop, they would plant their crop, they would harvest their crop, and sometimes they'd get way too much grain or way too many apples or whatever it is they were growing, and they couldn't sell them, and they go to rot. And then they would, when they didn't have enough rain, they would not be able to grow anything. I remember in 1953, wheat didn't grow but 30 inches, 36 inches, maybe. Usually it grew 80 to 100 inches. And so you can drive across it with a combine at a foot off the ground, 2 feet off the ground, and clip the top of the wheat off and harvest it without any effort at all. But in 1953, they had to put the combine blades down 1.5 inches from the soil. And I was 13 years old, and they would not let me drive that combine because I wasn't skilled. I drove the tractor, and I plowed a square mile of dirt, and I fed the hogs, and I fed the cattle, and I did everything on the farm but drive the combine. Why? Because it took a special skill to do it. Now, in trading, we have to have that special skill before we risk any money. And once we have all the knowledge we need to protect ourselves, our risk, then we're ready to risk some real money. But until we have that knowledge, and we start out that knowledge with accumulating little bits of data, that's the smallest form of information, of stuff in our head. I want to be careful with words. Okay, so the data is like an amoeba. If you studied biology in high school yet, you know an amoeba is the smallest cell in any kind of a living thing, amoeba. So it's a single cell, I think. I don't know enough about botany or about the biology to talk about it, but my point is data is the smallest thing about the brain. And then you collect a whole bunch of data, and you then start thinking about organizing it. And then that becomes information. Information is great, but if it doesn't go anywhere besides your head or your desktop, whether it be physical or in your computer, it's useless to society. It's useless to you. You can't make money with it. You can't use it for much. So you need to organize it a little bit more. And then that produces that additional work you apply to it, builds on it like you build on a house. You dig a hole in the ground, you lay some foundation, and then you put some cement down and make a frame. And then from there, you make sure that you stick a few bolts up through the cement, and then you put some boards on top of that cement, anchored down by those bolts that you stuck up. And you drill the holes in the right places, and that's knowledge. You got knowledge. You know how to build something. Now you watch somebody do it. Now you can do it yourself. You get a job as a layman, just a laborer mixing cement out there, and you can learn everything there is to know about building a house. You don't have to have a degree in architecture, and you don't have to be the superintendent. You just absorb information that you see them all doing. And there's usually 20 of them on that property if it's just a house, but there's 1,000 if it's a 70-story building. So it's just a matter of watching what's going on, and you can do it yourself later, just like your dad said. That's how he learned to build a website. Okay, so here we're going to try to structure your learning process so that you absorb the right stuff at the right time so that you'll come out a winner. And so the next thing after, and then knowledge is useless unless you get out of your computer and share it with people. And when you start sharing it with people, then it gets out in the street. And then, oh my God, he's, let's talk about Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla for a minute. They were arch rivals. And Edison was blessed because he had a friend who was the richest man in America. His name was J.P. Morgan, J. Pierpont Morgan. He's the richest man in America. And J.P. Morgan, who is the namesake for J.P. Morgan Chase now, headed up by a guy by the name of Jamie Dimon, who's their chief executive officer and one of my favorite people. Brilliant man. He was present when the market crashed and helped Secretary Paulson and Chairman of the Federal Reserve Bernanke save the financial industry back in 2008. So, but J.P. Morgan was a Scrooge. But he embraced Thomas Edison, who was a brilliant guy, but he just was tenacious. He wasn't that brilliant. I shouldn't have said he's that brilliant. He wasn't that brilliant, but he was tenacious. He was smart. And he made this light bulb, but he had to try it 1,000 times. He failed 1,000 times before he succeeded, but he made it. And that's what got in the history books, the fact that he failed 1,000 times, but he succeeded at his endeavor. But Nikola Tesla, who was from Serbia, he was a scumsucker in the eyes of J.P. Morgan and Thomas Edison, but he was 10 times smarter. But they kept their thumb on his head for 50 years. And he died penniless in a hotel in 1943 after coming to America in 1880. And he was screwed upon mercifully, and he accomplished so many things, but politically ruined by these two assholes. Now, we're not going to be corralled by that kind of thing. We're free to do it because in 1996, they came out with the Information Highway, which was the World Wide Web. And because the World Wide Web was let out to the world, just like a bunch of doves or a bunch of pigeons, that the door opened and millions of them flew out around the world. It can't stop it now. Anybody that wants to is free to grip a piece of it, and this is a piece of it. And before the World Wide Web, everything about trading commodities was a special little thing that was controlled by the Chicago Board of Trade, the Chicago Board of Trade in Chicago, the New York Board of Trade in New York, and the New York Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, 4 big organizations that controlled it all in the commodity world. And that's what we're trading. We trade commodities. Now, the stock market is much broader, much bigger, and much more complex and interesting, but it's not our bailiwick, not my bailiwick. I've been there, done that, but I found out that the commodities industry is much easier to succeed at. Now, you saw how you notice how quickly I made that $100 a minute ago. That is why you're here, is that example. Now, what we want to be able to do is kind of expand on that. That's why I closed the software, so we wouldn't watch that for a minute. So that example of what I did first failed, and then I succeeded. Now I'm going to reboot the software, and so you don't see any charts on this page. So what you have to do is click on this F, and it'll come back. All right, now I'm going to teach you a couple of other things about these charts, because this is our lifeline. This is your keyboard. This is for everything involves around your notebook computer. And for both of you, it's our tool now. It used to be a pencil and paper. Now it's a notebook computer, and that's our lifeline. So, and this is just one piece of software. that is very sophisticated. It comes from artificial intelligence. It's derived from artificial intelligence, and it's been made into an expert system. It's an expert system. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how we play with this thing to learn. Then I'm going to show you how we make money with this thing. But we don't want to try to make money with it until we learn how it works. So I'm going to kind of show you that now. So I'm going to show you this software, and then we're going to install it next week on both your computers. And step one is I want to show you how to manipulate it. And so I'm going to pull these things down a little bit so I can see them, because there's something in front of me that you can't even see, and that's my Zoom banner up there. And I always keep it up there, and I'm only using a laptop. I don't have another monitor on here. So now I've pulled them down to where I can see. Now, when we first brought this up, you couldn't see the candles on this chart. You may have noticed that. So I was getting ready to show you that if I click on the F right here, it brings everything into focus. It's a very important tool to know about. That's one. 8280, blind, crippled, or crazy. I will teach you how to use my right-hand trade to take $500 a day to keep the job away in just 1 hour a day while you watch us trade live right before your eyes.